Good morning. How are y'all doing out there? VIDICON, day three. Three, three, three. Yes, I'm pumped. Got an incredible lineup today. Once again, my brain cannot just figure out these audio settings this morning. Apologies. Got a big coffee. We had an amazing night last night, and we're going to continue that energy on today. So, let's get the first talk started. I am so excited for this talk. Yesterday, um, Alan had that amazing talk about Beam Center. If you didn't check it out, definitely check it out once it hits the archives. And in it, he was talking about, how he brought this video art to children and allowed it to, just enhance their imagination and creativity. And it was very beautiful. And I think that that's so important for our community, um, because they're the ones who, are just overjoyed at pushing random buttons and seeing what does what. And I think that childlike curiosity and imagination is, exactly what we need and why we do this. So that brings me to our next speaker here, Sarah Goodman, who you may have seen last night with that incredible music video drop. Wow. That was so good. It absolutely incredible. If you saw it, you know. Like, I had my speakers blasting, and it was just jam packed with emotion and energy, and truly awesome. We will have that on the archive as well. So, Sarah's got a talk about, it's titled What I Learned from Teaching Video Exploration to Students. And it's just a talk about her journey of teaching video art exploration, media archaeology, and retro gaming to middle and high school students from 2017 to 2020. Um, she's going to be talking about using video gear in an academic setting and helping students explore their interest and improve at various academic subjects. So topics will be, how hardware allows students on the artistic spectrum to express themselves, to how playing Road Rash can improve your writing and grammar skills. And she's going to be talking about her unique approach to bringing her passions for video art and glitch art into the classroom, and what kind of fascinating results occurred. So,
Hey, can y'all hear me? Um, Thank you, Ed, for that wonderful introduction. Um, I'm just gonna keep my chat live to make sure, well, just to give me some kind of sense of an audience. Otherwise, it kind of feels like I'm kind of talking into the void. So if you're in the chat right now, VidICon, can you see me? Can you hear me? Is everything good? Okay, chat, Ed's like chat delay, so whatever. All right, I'm just gonna go with it, and I think what I'll do is I'll make my Voltron guy my audience so that I have like a sense of a concrete anchoring audience. Um, so for those of you that don't know me, my name is Sarah. Um, I got into working with video hardware back in 2014. And that whole journey of how I got into it is a whole other talk. So, what I want to talk about today is how I magically was able to bring this sort of niche thing that a lot of us do into my day job, into working with middle school and high school students, and how it became kind of my 9 to 5 to teach weirdo video art to youth. And it's been an incredible journey, actually. One in which not only have I feel like I've given a lot of skills and a lot of tools to my students, but I feel as though I have learned a tremendous amount from my students. And I want to talk about that during this talk as well. And I wanted to use the metaphor of a feedback loop kind of as an umbrella for this talk, because I just think that it's kind of a perfect metaphor, because I feel like everything that I've taught my students during the past 3 or 4 years has been this loop of, as they've gotten more skills, as they've improved and on their own journey, I've in turn learned from them, and my own practice has improved. So just to give you a little context for what I'm doing when I'm not teaching, before the pandemic, I was working in different collaborations, DJing and doing visuals for bands in live performance settings, working behind the scenes to make music videos. So all along the way, when I'd be taking these skills into the classroom setting, I'd also be kind of working with these skills in my own life, and there was just this really nice integration of both. So let me take you back a little bit. The year is 2016, and I'm living in Chicago, and I've been teaching for a long time. I moved to Chicago to get my MFA in poetry, so that's like my formal education is in poetry and creative writing, and I taught ESL for many, many, many years. And I just finished teaching at an ESL program in downtown Chicago, and they were laying off people left and right. They had lost their contract. I think a Saudi Arabian king had died, and so we lost our contract with all of our Saudi Arabian students, and they were just laying everybody off. So I lost my job. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but it fell right around Christmas time, so I had this nice break to kind of think about, okay, what are my next steps? What am I going to do? And I saw a job opening for a high school called Fusion Academy, and it was brand new. It was just opening. And I read the mission statement for it, and I was like, wow, this kind of sounds too good to be true. It was this high school, private high school, that was opening with a model of one-to-one teaching. So every classroom is just you, the teacher, and one student, with this emphasis on customizing the content to that specific learner. So you get to know that student. Obviously, you can tell, like, based off of the one-on-one model, the kind of relationships that you build are much different than teaching a classroom of like 30 or 40 kids. So I applied to that right away, and I don't know, I just sort of saw a moment, an opportunity, I guess. And I went with it because I already could see that this was a school that was a little bit more alternative and open to different types of ideas. And I also was like, the school's brand new, right? So the infrastructure hasn't been molded or set yet. There's a lot of empty classrooms. We're sort of building the school as we go here. And so I was like, what if I just propose to the head of school that I build an AV lab or a video lab? It doesn't have to be all like bells and whistles. It can be, I didn't have a real plan of how I was going to put it together. I just had this vision that the school was the right fit for this vision. And I brought it to the head of school, and sure enough, she was like, how can we assist you? How can we help you? And they gave me the green light for it. So basically I had this little room, and my coworkers helped me to decorate it and put everything in. And I just kind of started out by bringing whatever extraneous gear that I had at home into the school. So if I had like an extra circuit bending machine, or some kind of extra effects processor, or a vintage video mixer, or some extra CRT monitors, I just would kind of lug them in, set them up, and start from there. Had like some VHS cam. So this picture right here up on the screen is like one of the iterations of the lab. I can kind of scroll down a little bit, so you can see there's like that big guy is the Panasonic MX50. We've got an old school Psychonizer. The story behind how I got that nice Sony CRT television is kind of a wonderful story that I'll get into. Um, and yeah, this was a room that existed at the school. And over the course of the years teaching, and I'm still teaching there, but I guess I'm kind of using it in the past tense because of the pandemic, and I don't get to do this in person anymore. But during the years that I was able to run the lab and work with kids, it kind of went through different iterations and meant different things to different children. I'll scroll down a little bit, and we'll get into some of the specifics in a little bit. You might not be able to see this, but it just says, welcome to the video lab. In the lab, you can learn about video mixing, video feedback, experimental photography, videography, editing, music videos, video art in general, how to make video poems, source-based analog effects processors, kind of understanding the difference between what is, modified effects processors versus what is just a video mixer. Also looking at the history of glitch art and where glitch art and video synthesis and video antique hardware kind of overlap. And also talking about curation and installation and how to explore hands-on, but then also think about how you want to present it. What kind of body of work do you want to show an audience? And getting young people to start thinking about that is really good for them because, I mean, I don't even know if half of adults have fully formed frontal lobes yet or whatever, but I mean, certainly when you're middle school and high school, your frontal lobes have not developed. So getting kids to start exercising that and thinking many steps ahead. Okay, I'm just enjoying myself. I'm playing a game. I'm working with a mixer, but now how can I kind of take that and create a finished piece? That's a really cool thing to do. So let me scroll down a little bit here. So this was also one iteration of the lab, and one thing I want to talk about is that the lab got created for a few reasons. One is that I had the gumption to just kind of go up to the head of school and be like, I want to do this. I want to try this. I think that's a little bit of my personality, kind of like diving into things before I really know how to do them and just making it work as I go. And then also I'm a kind of cold email kind of person, emailing people and being like, can I VJ your festival, and not really knowing how to do it yet, and then trying to figure it out as I go along. So I think that's one reason how the lab got created. I just was like, I want to make it. I want to do it. I did it. But the other reason the lab existed is because of the VIDICON community and all of the people that are a part of it. Like this piece of equipment that you'll see right here, the green fuzz, is modified gear that Chris LeBlanc had built and gifted to me when I was just starting out. And a really nice story is that I worked with a student who really, really, really understood how do I want to put it? There have been students I've worked with over the years that find it therapeutic and relaxing to work with video gear, right? And then there are students who work with the gear and you can tell it's changing their life, and the sparks are kind of going off in their mind, and you can tell this is going to be a path forward for them. So I had one student like that, and I ended up gifting him this piece of gear and telling him everything he needed to kind of glitch at home with it. His dad was so appreciative, and then it turned out that his dad used to work in television back in the 80s and 90s, and that's how, scrolling back up here, the lab got gifted this beautiful Sony Trinitron high quality broadcast monitor. When I look on eBay at the price of this monitor, it gets close to $1,000. So it's just that beautiful duocracy that Ed mentioned, I think is really at the heart of how something like this happened. And so I just want to thank everybody that donated gear to me along the way. Like, you have no idea how much that helped shape what I was doing on a daily basis and how much it shaped the lives of these kids. So a beautiful kind of full circle, right? Um, I get gifted something, I gift it, I get gifted back. It's just beautiful. Um, so this is right here. See if I can make this a little bit bigger. This is a finished copy of a book that one of my students made from working in the video lab. And before I get into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about just some of how fusion classes work at the high school. So there's two types of classes that you can take besides your core classes like English, math, science, all your basic core classes. Then you can take electives, which are, course credit electives. They'll help you graduate from high school. Things like film studies, experimental photography, photography 1, advanced photography, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all film and media, all classes that have like a curriculum that you have to teach and follow, and you get credit. But then there are what's called TMs, which is like tutoring, mentoring sessions. And those classes are like extra classes that students can take, and the teacher can completely craft the class like from scratch. So I began creating classes of video exploration and learning video feedback and learning about vintage video hardware. And certain kids really loved these classes and would go home and tell their parents about it, and they'd want to take it. And then I'd end up teaching an entire year to a student. We could go so deep. So this is one student. This work right here is the product of one student where I got to teach him for an entire year just in the video lab, twice a week for an entire year in the video lab. And because of the nature of the program being one-to-one and how specialized it is, we do often get a lot of students that fall on the autistic spectrum. We get students that suffer from anxiety and depression, and maybe they just have a little bit of a harder time in like a mainstream setting, right? So this student came to Fusion, and he was essentially nonverbal in my class. He was pretty high on the autistic spectrum. And I was saying, man, how am I gonna do this class? I mean, I don't know what it's hard for me to tell what he's processing when I talk. I'm speaking, he's not responding. As soon as I took him into the lab, where all the machinery was, and as soon as I started to just listen to him, not necessarily speaking, but just listening to his energy and how he was interacting with the machinery, it was unbelievable. It was like a complete transformation. This student was all of a sudden, like, lexical chunks were just like, he'd be quiet, and then all of a sudden a stream of words and language would come out while he was interfacing with the technology. So I think there's, I'm no theorist and I'm no educational research expert, but just anecdotally from my experience, I could say that there's a strong case for hardware and video electronics and this type of this type of art form being extremely therapeutic for people on the spectrum. It's definitely therapeutic for me. I can tell you that much. So it was just incredible. He made this book. He ran with it. He did all. You can see all of it is from the gear we had in the lab. And I'll scroll down here, and you can see a couple more pages of the spread. And he learned how to not only manipulate all of the gear that was in the classroom, but he also learned then how to curate it, right? How to think about how to make a book. What image do you want juxtaposed next to another image? Why do you want it to look that way? Not an easy task to do. Here is another one, and I'm keeping all my students obviously anonymous, but showing you their work. So um, here's another student who took my class and created a Finnish little booklet called Infinite Abstractions. And this student was extremely articulate, extremely precocious. He's a middle schooler. Um, and he had experienced some hardships in his life. And he decided he wanted to write a novel about it at the age of 12. So a much different vibe, a much different energy than my previous student, um, which it made sense that he wanted to work with the um, the lab and create poems from the stills that he took. So he was learning how to manipulate the gear. He was learning how to use a DSLR camera to rescan and what settings are best for photographing a CRT, and then laying it out, and then getting inspired and writing poems based off of those images. So I'm trying to see here if I can. I know it's kind of small in the window for you, but I'll read to you his poem, which I thought was beautiful. It's kind of this distorted eyeball, and the name of the poem is I Saw. I watched in shock as the wind blew vigorously. I saw signs get blown down and people rushing inside. I heard thunder rage in the air. I saw people panicking. I saw people inside. And the whole book, I don't have every page of it, but the whole book is like that, a little image that he took and then a poem that was inspired by it. Down here we have another student, and this student was just so into the visual side of things, didn't want to write, wasn't so interested in doing like Photoshop collage stuff. They were much more interested in the pure, beautiful abstractions that you can get from video feedback. After many, many sessions of just playing around, they wanted to create this beautiful abstract book. Then I had another student, and they're all so unique and amazing in different ways, who was just obsessed with anime and wanted to, he's like, you mean I can bring in a DVD and run it through all this stuff and then I can kind of paint over it and manipulate it? I mean, this was like blowing his mind, which is amazing to me, because when you think about the type of advanced technology that most of our youth are growing up with, the type of technology that I'm showing them is actually pretty basic. I don't want to call it basic, but it's vintage tech. This is not like technology that is like state of the art, cutting edge. So something that was like repeatedly interesting to me was how excited kids would get in the lab, just like, manning a VHS cam or controlling a VHS cam, or just manipulating these interfaces that have very tactile buttons and very like simple cause and effect, A to B, like put the DVD in the DVD player, run it through the effects processor, push the buttons, get some crazy stuff on the screen. This was like some kind of miracle, but yet these kids are like, gaming and streaming their games on Twitch and chatting at the same time and doing stuff in virtual reality. So that's just something to note, that the charm of it is pretty timeless, and there's no real generation gap that happens with this tech in the lab. Like, the kids are really all about it. So here's his creations, which I thought were quite beautiful. He was using a mix. I believe he was mostly using the Panasonic MX50 here, and getting some nice wipes and circle wipes, diamond wipes, and some nice feedback, and then taking photographs off of the CRT, and sometimes we had in the lab a CRT and also an LCD monitor, and that's something that the kids learned about too, is like thinking about the monitor as a canvas, and that different types of canvas have different quality and yield different results. And so what you might get often of one monitor type is going to be different. So they would experiment with that. So Here, I think he's mostly taking off of a CRT, and you get these really beautiful pastels. So I thought that was really, really great. And for the anime nerds out there, I'm sure you can maybe identify which anime this is. So here's a student who, classic middle schooler, totally obsessed with Fortnite. Lives and dies by the Fortnite code, loves Fortnite. I can say, very honestly that I knew nothing about Fortnite before I became a middle school and high school teacher. Now I know a lot more about Fortnite than I ever thought I would. I even have a Fortnite t-shirt somewhere that I rep sometimes for my students. But yeah, so he was a student who, I don't think video art changed his life, but he took my class as like a summer class just to have some fun. And he just like loved like running. Like, so he would stream and record his Fortnite adventures, and then we would just burn them to a DVD, and then we would run that DVD into, through some of the effects processors, and he ended up making a really cool music video. So that's the other thing that's pretty cool at the high school is we have a recording arts studio, and a lot of times students who take my class are able to collaborate with students who are taking music recording classes. And so we got like a track from a friend of his, and then they were able to collaborate, got his track, and then we made like this really dope, glitchy, feedbacky Fortnite video to the track. So that was really cool. Here's some rescanning with just an iPhone, which sometimes went down in the lab. Got some pretty wipes here. This is a student using the Panasonic MX-20, and that's something we talked about too, like different types of interfaces in these old mixers. Some of them are a little bit more hiccupy, like the MX-20, but you can still find like hidden gems. And we talked about how like, some of the older video mixers are really dope for like a live VJing setting, and then others you want to keep them in your home lab, right? Because anyone who's used the MX-20 knows that is a funky little mixer that you can't really use in a live setting, but it's got some real hidden spots. So this student was exploring some of those hidden spots, and I actually just love this image so much, like the MX-20 next to the MX-50 with that TV and that image. I mean, it's beautiful. Student having some fun with their eyes, pretty classic video art stuff. We did have exhibitions, and we did have nights of installations, and we had nights at the school where families would come and check out. I've had students that got really into the side of rearranging the lab. How should we put the TVs? What do we want to show? What kind of environment do we want to create? So some students really got to practice, like, what would it be like to kind of put like a small gallery show together? And we just turned the school into a little gallery setting and invite the parents and put a little flyer together. And this is an image from one of those nights. And just some more feedbacky goodness. So the student who I gave the green fuzz to, whose father then gave us that beautiful Sony Trinitron, that student really blew me away. I feel like he's one of those students that's going to end up with a whole LZX rig one day. So the first week that I got the LZX video, I brought it into the lab. This kid basically taught me how to use it. I'm a firm believer, like part of my teaching philosophy is that I'm a facilitator, I'm a conduit, I obviously do have lived experiences and expertise, but I also believe that my students have expertise and hidden expertise, and that part of my job is to like help them tap into the stuff that they know, or that they could, that they have potential in, right? This kid, you know, I was just like, please teach me. We had such a good time. He was the one, I teached him for an entire year. And it was partially teaching him for a year. It wasn't so much like that me alone could teach him or him alone could teach me. It was the synergy of our dynamic together and how open-minded he was to experimentation. Like every day he would be like, Sarah, I fell asleep thinking about like a way we could rearrange all of the, you know, the chain and the last output going into the monitor. I thought of something new. I thought of, you know, he was like, Sarah, I think I figured out a way that we could do this like figure 8 feedback loop into both MX50s. He was just kept, once he realized, you know, this could go here and that could go here, he had that kind of brain. He was the only student I ever had. I had a Rubik's Cube in my class, and he was the only student that I ever had who he would come in and he could put the Rubik's Cube together in 20 seconds. So he had that kind of brain, you know, which is like amazing for patching. And he loved to do this sort of surrealist game where we would patch blind. Like that was one of his favorite activities. So we would come into the class and he'd be like, Sarah, I want to patch blind today. And he would sit down and close his eyes, and I would just hand him, you know, the little cords, and he would just, or the little patch bay cables, and he would just close his eyes and randomly patch and then see what happens. And sometimes nothing good would happen, but sometimes magic would happen, and then we would photograph the magic patch, you know, and see what we could build off of it. And once he realized that he could run that, you know, so simple, but once he realized that he could run that LZX video into the MX50 with that feedback going, that was very mind-blowing for him. He thought it was just absolutely gorgeous. And he was taking a geometry course at the time that I was teaching him this course. And his geometry teacher and I got together one day and we're like, well, how can we collaborate? I'm not, you know, I don't have much experience with math. I wish that I had a different type of education with math, because I feel like everyone has the potential or the capacity to understand math, but some people are a little more maybe math-minded. It's a little easier for them. So I wish I had a different path with math, but as it stands now, math and me, we don't really know what's going on. So it was kind of amazing because he was able to do this final project where he used my class to do his final project on a geometry unit math class. So that was like a really awesome way that the video lab was also functioning at the school, where kids were going in and getting hands-on experience and a little bit of intro to video synthesis and stuff. And then they're able to take, you know, some of the geometric shapes that they were learning and apply it to the actual math that they were learning in their class. Super dope. So another thing that I taught my students and felt pretty passionate about giving them some of these tools was just basically how to turn your smartphone, which pretty much, I mean, not even pretty much, 100% every student had one. And I would say even like 98% of them had iPhones, right? Which is what I'm more familiar with. So just showing them that, you know, this little device has a lot of potential. And, you know, video gear is expensive, right? I mean, even when you don't have an entire studio full of modular synthesis gear, even when you're just full of video mixers and vintage TVs, all that stuff is a lot of money to acquire over the years. And so these kids are kind of coming in and they're getting to use this equipment that they don't have at home. So how do you, as an educator, right, as their teacher, how do I encourage them to keep creating something in a similar vein when they don't have access to these tools? So one way that I thought that I could, you know, empower them to continue making art in a kind of glitchy manner was apps. So there's 3 apps that I've gone pretty deep with, and that's Glitch, Matter, and Union. And later on, when I'm done talking and I pop back into the chat, because I'm trying not to make my brain crazy with any lags or delay right now. But when I pop back in after, I will post a link to a tutorial that I did that kind of shows you how to make landscapes just using your mobile phone and just using those 3 apps. So the process here is you go into the lab, play around, you learn what's in there, mess around with the MX50, you get this gorgeous feedback, you capture it, right? And then what do you do with it? Look, playing with video feedback is fun. Look, no one's going to deny that. I'm pretty much obsessed with it, and sometimes lose sight that what I'm making just looks like a bunch of green and purple, like googly gook, whatever, and it looks like, you know, what I and 10,000 other people have made with feedback. And the trick is, like, how do you use these tools that are so much fun and you're kind of oohing and ahhing anytime it pops up on the screen because it does feel magical? How do you create something that is unique, right? How do you make something that looks different from what other people are making and it has some kind of form? Look, I mean, this beautiful abstract image, it is beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. But what if you could turn that image into this image, right? I think you get something that's a little more anchored. The eye and the brain's doing a little more storytelling, right? You're not just like floating out in space here. There's architecture, there's structure, there's complementary colors, and there's these nice background kind of feedbacky vibes going on with it. And that's the help that I think post-processing does, and, you know, like Adobe products, but then getting those apps on your phone, Matter, Union, and Glitchy, super fun way for students to go home and be like, well, I took a bunch of photos of the video feedback in school today, but now at home I can just mess with these